So I hope everyone's okay. Mm. Mm. We always live in an amount of uncertainty, and sometimes the uncertainty or the insecurity becomes, you know, stronger in our awareness and shared by others. So that means that when a lot of outer things are not secure, um, then we have to kind of look for what is secure and what we can rely on. Hopefully, our sitting can help with that a little bit, in the sense that when we um, when we sit, you are returning to something that, as you practice, becomes more and more familiar to you. So it's kind of a coming home, a homecoming. That even if your home, is unstable, whether it's your immediate home or your national home, or your global home, that there's something stable you can find. In Zen, we call it the still point. And that still point, there's something that after a few minutes, hopefully you can touch stillness within your mind and your body that then becomes, your secure place. Even when there's a lot of disturbing thoughts on the surface, if you can train yourself to quieten your mind and just go a little bit under the surface and become aware of that stillness, that wordless place, or the silence underneath the sound, the wordlessness that's just underneath the language, you know. So that's what I think we can rely on more. Is we're very aware now, more so than probably we have been recently, that our external conditions are not as supportive as we thought they were. Whether it's with health and illness, or whether it's with work and all sorts of outer conditions. That's not to say they're not important at all. They're very important in the relative sense. But they're reminding us of something that the Buddha taught, very clearly. That all external factors and conditions are ultimately unreliable. So when we can view the news and our situation, our conditions, through the lens of the teachings, it's not so much that we're putting rose-colored glasses on and looking around and saying, oh, everything is good this way. No. It means that, we can actually accept reality, because this is what it is. I mean, the Buddha was right. Things are changing constantly. They're pretty unstable and unreliable. And generally, when a lot of change happens, it involves pain and suffering. And that just seems to be, more kind of aware now, and happening perhaps more quickly. So, the lens that the Dharma can offer is sort of a corrective lens. We were seeing a bit blurry, and now we can see with a little greater focus the way of the world. This is basic. It's really basic. And the anxiety and fear people have in relation to this is basic anxiety and fear that arises when change is difficult. So impermanence and dukkha are really being clearly expressed in these circumstances, and we should observe our experience using the Dharma as a corrective lens, so that we can face reality really clearly, with clarity. And that clarity leads to wisdom. And the wisdom is the ability to deal well with these changes. So this is what I wanted to wonder tonight is, what does it mean to deal well with insecurity and change? Meaning, how can we feel free when we feel very confined by our outer circumstances? Each of us right now is pretty limited. We're stuck at home, but also we're limited in knowing, we have very little control over our circumstances. And in a sense, that's kind of a definition of the opposite of freedom. When you're not free, you feel like you have very little control over your situation. And when you're free, we tend to think that freedom, we equate it with choice, that we can choose what we want to do and where we want to go. And that's, a kind of definition of freedom. So, there's the really well-known quote saying by the Buddha that there's only one taste in the ocean, taste of salt, and there's only one taste, and in the Dharma, there's only one taste, the taste of freedom. So the real freedom that we want to experience is not necessarily the ability to do more, or even the ability to have more choices. But what is it, the freedom in the Dharma? Like, what is that taste? What is the freedom that the Dharma can offer us? What is that taste? What does it feel like? And that's what I wonder. And I'm talking about freedom because obviously, this week we celebrate Pesach. And it would be an interesting experience for those of us who, have a Pesach Seder and, explore these themes and read about them. And it's like freedom and slavery. And the story is quite interesting because, the slavery was within a certain geographical place, and then if you could get away from that place, you could have freedom and live your life the way you want to. And we kind of understand freedom as, in that story, as the ability to, choose your own destiny. And someone who's a slave, even if they're in a large house or a large mansion, they don't, and they can choose what they want to do during a set hour, they ultimately don't have choice because they will be told, that they can't leave. So the interesting thing in that story, and I just want to reflect on this for a moment with you, is that when people did gain freedom and they got out of their physical prison, the mental prison was much more difficult to get out. People still, when they were on the road to Israel, they were still fighting. They were still reminiscing and dreaming about the food they had in Egypt. And many people wanted to go back when things got hard. And you can take the Jew out of Egypt, but you can't take Egypt out of the Jew. So there's the slavery of the mind that we carry with us. So we have to understand that there's a certain freedom of the Dharma. And when I'm talking about the freedom of the Dharma that has a taste of freedom, is not necessarily the Buddhist Dharma, it's just the free of the Buddha nature, the enlightened, the awakened mind. What is that freedom? And can we achieve that even if our outer circumstances are very limited. So we know many examples of people who can be very free outwardly, but inwardly are very disturbed and upset. People who can have very small outward lives, very limited in their circumstances. But they can have real happiness and joy and freedom that many people would envy. So, what is the freedom of the Dharma? I want to read first from the one of the chapters of the Dhammapada where the Buddha mentions freedom, and he says, the traveler has reached the end of the journey. In the freedom, he is free from all sorrow. And the burning fever for life is no more. The wise one, who wisely controls his senses, as a good driver controls his horses, is free from passion and pride. Calm like the earth, steady like a pillar, pure like a lake that is clear, is free from samsara. In the light of his vision, he has found freedom. His thoughts are at peace, the words are peace, and his work is peace. Because he doesn't have the burden of desire, he has joy which others cannot find. Now, what is instructive and insightful here is the line where it says, in the light of his vision, he has peace. So it's not so much that we're escaping the outer conditions, but we have a way to view them. What is our vision? What is the vision that we see our world with? And this is really the key to understanding the type of work that the Dharma is doing. It's changing the way you see the world and the way you see yourself. You know, it's changing your perspective radically so that you no longer see outer things as controlling you, but you see your ability to change your inner vision as within your ability, within your power. As long as we think that we are controlled by outside forces, that's a definition of being a slave, of being unfree. Because you're dependent on something or someone from the outside, you know, opening the door for you, unlocking the lock. And you know, when the Buddha was saying, you know, in the light of his vision, he has found freedom. Steady like a pillar, pure like a lake that is clear, free from samsara. Still, this is pretty general for us, but it's giving us a direction to understand that it's in the way we see the world and how we see the world. So I want to explore a little bit now what it means what that vision means. The vision of freedom. What is the vision of freedom that the Dharma offers us? So Ajahn Buddhadasa, who was one of the great 20th century Thai monks, and he speaks and he writes about freedom, and it's gives us a bit of direction into what his vision is. He says the skandhas, when the 5 skandhas, 5 aggregates, and what are the aggregates? They're how a human being is kind of in a Buddhist understanding, how the human self is made up. It's, you know, this sense of self is made up of these 5 parts considered. You know, there's the physical form, there are sensations or feelings. Okay, there's form, there's feeling, then there's a perception, you know, how I receive, how I first understand what I sense. And then the fourth one is, like discriminating thought, likes and dislikes, what I think about this sensory input. And then there's a consciousness, which is a greater sense of self that I get, like a whole sense of being that I get from those form and feeling and perception and desire or will, and then a general consciousness that brings that all together in a sense of self. So Ajahn Buddhadasa says, when those 5 ways we become a self, he says, when they function without clinging, there is freedom. And that's a great statement, and that really gives us some, practical and real direction here. We want to try and understand, what is the taste of freedom? Because what I'm trying to do here is understand, just like we can taste the salt in the ocean and know immediately, I know what salt is. As practitioners and Sangha, or people who find some inspiration in the Dharma, we should know that taste of freedom when we experience or read or sit or just become exposed to the Dharma. What is that taste of freedom? Just like we taste salt, we should taste freedom when we hear the words of the Dharma or reflect upon them. And that has to do with when the way you are in the world is functioning without attachment. That's what Ajahn Buddhadasa said, that when our 5 aggregates, when we have a body and our senses are working, like our eyes and ears, and, smell, taste, and touch, and when we're receiving sensory input, and then we meet that sensory input in our mind, and we say, oh yeah, there's a light, there's yellow, there's foam, there's these forms, there's a smell, there are words on the page. And then I have the sense of I like or I don't like it. I want it, I don't want it. And that's just part of the self, okay? He's not saying that the aggregate is wrong there. But can you have likes and dislikes? Can you have can you have desires even, and not be attached to those desires? It's a very subtle point here, okay? Because we're not going to get rid of wanting and not wanting. You're not just going through life saying, you open a menu in the restaurant. One day when we'll get to a restaurant, you open a menu in a restaurant and just close your eyes and say, I'll take that. That's not what we're saying when we're functioning without attachment. You can have likes and dislikes, but if you don't get what you want, can you accept it with full equanimity? And when you get what you want, can you not be attached to it and not feel great or pride or have, undue joy because you got what you want? Can we find the middle way between extremes so that I'm not dejected and I'm not ecstatic when I don't get what I want, when I get what I want? So can we function without attachment? And can we notice when attachment is starting to make me feeling like, I'm a little too invested here in this and in my sense of self? So when Ajahn Buddhadasa is saying, the 5 aggregates, the skandhas, are functioning without clinging. This is freedom. Wow, that's really, a direct statement of how to function in the world with a sense of equanimity, and that equanimity of being able to let go and accept and to go with the changes and to accept your likes and dislikes, but not to exaggerate them into these are so important. But, accept when they happen, accept when they don't happen. And life is going to be constantly like that. We get what we want. We don't get what we want. We get what we don't want. We don't get what we don't want. Over and over and over again, that's going to be the situation. If not now, tomorrow, next day. It's so obvious and so predictable, but we still get caught up in it and become attached. So how can we find that sort of middle way between extremes? The extreme is saying it doesn't matter at all, and the extreme of rejecting it, And the extreme is saying like, this matters so much. So that's the practice of watching your mind and how your mind relates to changing circumstances. The study Buddha way is to study the self. So again and again, we're turning back and saying, okay, what's my relationship to this situation, this reality? Not what is it doing to me? What am I doing in relation to it? Now, this gives ourselves more power and more ability to have that vision of, I understand anicca, anatta, and dukkha. I understand the nature of reality here as it's happening, that there's change and there is dissatisfaction and difficulty inherent in every change. And when I look at my 5 skandhas, or the way I am as a person, through body and sense and mind and breath, it's not so fixed. There's some little anatta there. Anatta is the non-self there. Within self, there's non-self. The non-self is very connected to the change. But when I forget that, dukkha arises. So I think by constantly reflecting in a natural and inviting way of the vision of the Dharma is a way to invite more inner freedom into your moment by moment experience. The experience of having a body, the experience of having senses. Just reflecting on your relationship to your senses is a great way to explore non-attachment. There are sounds you like, there are sounds you don't like. There are tastes you like, there are tastes you don't like. There are smells you like, smells you don't like. And there's touch you like and touch you don't like. There are thoughts. Remember, the mind is one of your senses too in the Dharma. So there are 6 senses. There are thoughts you like and thoughts you don't like. And each time you're reflecting not just what the thought is, but what is your relationship, your reaction to that thought, and how I can function with non-attachment here. Can I turn it? Can I release so that I can inhabit these 5 skandhas, that my awareness can be with these attributes in the way myself is, with non-attachment. Non-attachment is not an idea. This is really important. Non-attachment is a practice. Non-attachment is not a teaching, it's a practice. Okay? And that's something that we need to remember moment by moment. When we find ourselves holding on or pushing away. And what does that mean, holding on or pushing away? Wanting and thinking, I'll be happy if I have this. Or not wanting and thinking, I'll only be happy if I don't have this. And we don't say it so explicitly like that, but still we kind of have that investment in our sense of self. So that's where we can observe a bit what's going on. So I want to continue a little bit with Ajahn Buddhagasa, if I may. Call it salvation, deliverance, liberation or release. These all amount to the same thing, freedom, the cool life that doesn't bite itself. When the aggregates, the skandhas, are clung to, that is the prison of life. Letting go of them is like a convict being released from prison. It doesn't mean you don't have the skandhas. You can't. You have a body, you have a mind, you have senses, you have perceptions, and you have desires. But releasing their hold on you is like being let out of this prison of the self. You think your home is a small place? Yourself usually is even smaller. So we want to open up that sense of self. If you can open up your sense of self, then wherever you are, even if it's in a small room, can be a bigger place. Okay? In this freedom, selfishness and the reactive emotions no longer get in the way. In Pali, this is described as viveka, the oneness of the heart-mind, where you're not disturbed or harmed. Does this freedom interest you? Nibbana, the supreme reality of Buddhism, is simply this coolness. Thus, it's important that we understand this coolness properly. When it's no longer hot, we say the cool is Nibbana, it's cool. We're really talking about the fires of the mind, which we mean the reactive emotions, the defilements. So if you honestly look at greed, hatred, fear, and so on, you will realize they are truly fires that are burning your heart mind. Going out of such fires is Nibbana. Such freedom is the meaning of life that doesn't fight its owner. This is the momentous choice given to us. What freedom do we choose? What life do we choose? It's amazing. It's a wonderful passage. And again, offering us some really practical advice here, right? Freedom is really, really practical. It's practical. It's a vision, okay? A vision of the Dharma, understanding impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and non-self. In Mahayana Buddhism, those are called the 3 marks of existence, but they add another mark of existence, which is Buddha nature, understanding that each human being has a inherent awakened nature to him or her. So those are the 4 natures, all right? The 4 marks of existence. Seeing that vision, understanding that vision more and more in your life, understanding that having the vision that your body, form, your sensations, your perceptions, your desires, and your sense of self are always shifting and changing, and you shouldn't be like holding on to them, grasping onto them. Understanding also here that the states of mind that are harmful and negative, right, imprison you. They hurt, they harm you, and to notice when they cause harm, because as he says, it's life that bites its owner. Okay, and those fires of greed, of anger, of aversion, right? The fires of desire and attachment, and the fires of delusion and ignorance, of not having any sense of understanding the truth and the wisdom of the Dharma. So those are called the 3 poisons or the 3 fires. But more specifically also, we can talk about the defilements or the hindrances, which are, ill will, having anger, and, having a lot of doubt and insecurity and anxiety and worry and restlessness and, boredom and those types of things, lack of motivation. Okay, those types of defilements or like just difficult emotions and feelings, right? What do they do when you experience them? They make you feel very limited. They're very limiting. So compassion and loving kindness and equanimity and sympathetic joy, the Brahma Viharas, they're called the great temples, okay? Right, the godly temples. Brahma Vihara is a temple, and Brahma is like God. So they're like divine temples because they're so huge. Whereas the fires are like really, they burn away like your sense of self, that greatness. So, they really shrink your mind, or you can open your mind. And we should notice when your mind is feeling contracted or when your mind is feeling more open. And that's basically whether you're feeling like you're in the prison of a sense of self or a more free and open place. And when we talk about free and open, we mean that we're not experiencing those really negative feelings. We're not really attached to our sense of self as we experience it through form and feelings and perceptions and desires. Doesn't mean you don't have those, just means you're not attached to them. And we understand we have a vision of the Dharma as we look out at life, and we understand anicca, anatta, and dukkha, impermanence and non-self and difficulty. That is like a way to feel a sense of calm. And making peace doesn't mean it's good. It just means I can accept things as they are, because the teachings show me that that's reality. Like that's just, the Dharma is sort of a description of life as it is. And the reason it tastes like freedom, if you consider it, is because you generally don't need to be convinced of something that's not true. You just compare it with the way, observe life, and you may find that it tastes right. Like it just seems right. And so when you consider it, it makes you feel more at peace with the way things are. Because yeah, of course, the teachings show me that this is the way life is. Why would I expect otherwise? Well, I expect otherwise because I'm caught up with my own sense of self and expectations. So I want to share a couple of last passages with you on the topic of freedom here. And one is from Suzuki Roshi. And when he says, when you're able to sit, he connects this vision and this inner freedom of the mind to our sitting. He says, when you're able to sit and experiencing just sitting, then the meaning of your everyday life will be very different. You will have freedom from everything. That is the main point. Unless you have freedom from things, from the things you have or see. Sorry. You have freedom from everything. That is the main point. Usually you have no freedom from things that you have or see. But when you really meditate, you will have freedom from things. You will truly enjoy your life because you are not attached to those things. When you're not thinking that you have another moment, then naturally you can accept things as they are and see things as they are. So the connection here is that one of the things that we want to do in our meditation practice is connect more concretely to our present moment. Present moment not as an idea, but as a breath, as a thought that's passing in our mind, as a sensation that we're having. So when we can observe our experience moment by moment, we can start to see that the form I have in my body and the sensations that I receive in my senses, okay, and the thoughts that I have in my mind, they are, very transient and passing. And if I can observe that in sitting, and it's really pretty much only in sitting that I can really notice that nature, because I'm stopping and I'm paying attention to that. That's where the vision of anicca, of impermanence, really becomes more clear to us. And that is the main point of meditation, is that when we can understand impermanence as the experience of our own self, and that's what meditation can offer. It's not a transcendent vision. It's actually looking clearly at the nature of yourself as impermanent, as non-attached, as constantly arising and passing through body, breath, and mind. Then our attachment starts to be weakened because we see the nature of self. It's not a magic pill. I mean, anyone who's sat for any amount of time knows that it doesn't happen just by sitting. But we start to become more comfortable with the sense of change. And when you can make friends with impermanence, then the changes that happen become a little less a source of anxiety because you just know that that's the way it is. So this Suzuki Roshi may call it freedom from everything, but really the way I'd like to say it is more making friends with change. So if you can observe the change in first your breath, your body, and your mind, right? And when we're talking body, we're talking about outer conditions. Remember, the body of the senses, sounds come and go, sensations come and go, touch comes and goes, taste and sound and smell come and go, thoughts come and go. Right? Those are the 5 skandhas that we observe in our meditation. We observe the change. And in that change, we start to get a certain understanding of non-self, an intuitive understanding, not an intellectual one. We start to accept between what we are as a process of change. That is who and what we are. And in that understanding, there is a sense of greater freedom because you're not bound by any single sense of self. Whether you feel good about yourself or bad about yourself, those are changing situations. And what does that mean? That means that we can feel a little more free within the limitation because we understand that the limitation is limited, that the limitation is changing and impermanent. So there's a taste of freedom there when you sit. And even when you notice dukkha, when you notice difficulty or suffering or pain, that too has the same taste of the Dharma. Does it mean it's pleasant or unpleasant? No. If it's dukkha, it's generally unpleasant. But it can taste of freedom because it's teaching us the Dharma in this difficulty. One of the things that I've heard several times here and in other groups and situations is that sometimes it seems even more difficult to keep your vision and to maintain your practice and to maintain your commitments when you have more time. Because it's just an ironic situation where you have more time, but less time to practice. So it's shared. Everybody experiences that. Everyone has great intentions, and then we get on the computer. So these things happen. And there's nothing to judge or to blame. You just accept that this is, I'm looking for some relief, with my space. I want some form in this. I'm looking for some security. And, and we go for kind of a short-lived sense of security until that ends and we look for something else. But, it's all okay. But I think that certain reflections that can help motivate us. So one of the hindrances that come up is, restlessness. It's one of the 5 hindrances. One of the 5 emotional obstacles is feeling restless. And restless is connected to boredom. And that can create also a sense of doubt, like, I don't know if I can do this, or what's the point? So here we should take some time to reflect upon in order to motivate us that this time is passing and it's rare. And I don't mean so much this time of being stuck in your house because of a virus, but the opportunity of the opportunity of our human life right now. or human life. And in the Dharma, the teaching of just how rare and important this human life is really central, especially in Mahayana tradition. And the fact that we're born human without serious disabilities, most of us, and without cognitive or physical impairments. You know, we're stuck at home and we think that's an impairment. You know, try like being cognitive or physically impaired in a serious way. And your practice and your ability to learn and to create a vision would be a lot harder. So we should take some time to go back to the basics. When I said at the beginning of this evening, our practice is going to be more focused on the basics. We sit, we talk about the Dharma, and you continue your night. Well, the basics are even before that. The basics have to do with having your body and mind and your mental and physical health right now. And being alive is the most basic thing, most basic part of your Dharma practice. If we're going to the basics, is that you're a human being alive at this point in time in history. And that's pretty remarkable. Yeah. So being born a human right now, living this time, we should take a moment to appreciate that fact before all of your history comes into play. We should also reflect upon the fact that unlike many humans who have the same situation that we have, being born a human with relative health, mental and physical health, from some really remarkable karma and flow of our life, we found ourselves interested in a spiritual practice, and wanting to awaken something in our mind that we felt, is there. So we have some awareness of our Buddha nature, and we want to expand that and cultivate that awareness. We want to realize our nature more. And that's an amazing thing that you really should appreciate, even if you go through days of just being like, unmotivated and bored and practice seems far away. It comes back to your mind and there's sort of a pull. And the fact that you're pulled towards awakening, is a remarkable condition that you should appreciate. So it's not so much dependent on your practice. Your practice is something that will help cultivate that awakening, but you have that, that whisper in your soul. And that's also something you should appreciate. So don't get down on yourself for not doing some, active practice of sitting on your cushion, but appreciate the whisper that, is reminding you of who you really are. Meaning most of us have we're a bit disenchanted with samsara, and we kind of have an aspiration for nirvana. We're not like sold by the ads, right? We have healthy skepticism, and that's an important thing to appreciate. The fact that even though we can't go to a center now, but we can, access teachings, we can come together in a group, is something you should appreciate too. So all of these are ways that we can further encourage our development of inner freedom. Appreciate that you're born human with relative health in body and mind. You may suffer in many ways, but you're aware that ending suffering is perhaps a possibility. That you have a certain, you're inspired by a teaching that teaches about the nature of your own mind. And in some way, you continue. You should appreciate that. That you have access to the Dharma and the teachings, is also remarkable at this time. So those three factors should, give you a sense of, kind of wonder like, wow, and wonder like, what should I do? The two senses of wonder, like wonderful, and I wonder how I should live my life. So Ajahn Buddhadasa was saying, when he said, what freedom do we choose? How do we want to live our lives? I think that's a question, and it's not that he's giving us the answer saying, and here I'll tell you how. No, saying how can you be more free in your mind? And that's a question that will motivate our practice every day, is to recognize that, there's always greater freedom to cultivate. So there's a wonderful haiku by Basho. It's one of his famous ones. It's summer grass, all that's left of warrior dreams. He was walking one day and he saw a helmet on the field, and he realized that he was on a field where there had been a major battle, and there were just like some helmets. That was all that was left, with the tall green grass. We're heading into summer now. End of spring is happening, or mid-spring, but mid-end. Summer grass, all that's left of warrior dreams. Everything that we experience turns to grass. All that's going to be left is the summer grass, whether it's here or somewhere else. And having the long view of our experience could sometimes help. All that's going to be left of all of our dreams and all of our, our wars and our concerns, it's going to be summer grass. And when we can look at that, say, in the end, death is a great awakening. It's going to give me some vision here. I'm not going to rush towards it, but I'm going to remember that, there is, there's a freedom that I can access now that is not about, changing this situation. It's about changing my mind. And then if you can do that, wherever you are, you'll be able to touch that still point. So in our practice, and that comes back to Suzuki Roshi saying, when we sit, that's what we're doing in our zazen. Can you taste freedom in the Dharma when you observe your breath? Can you taste the freedom when you observe the pain in your legs? Can you taste the freedom of the Dharma when you read really disturbing reports the next time you go on the news? Can you taste that, the taste of the Dharma? Can you see the tall summer grass in whatever you see? So I invite us to do that, because I think there's really, there's a choice we have here. Are we aspiring for nirvana, or are we going around samsara? And we've been around enough to know that there's no way out. It's just going to go around again. If it's not this problem, it's going to be another problem, right? And another verse that Basho wrote at the end of autumn was many nights on the road, and not dead yet, the end of autumn. So that goes well with the summer grass, because as long as we're still on this path on the road, and it'll be many nights on this road, if we're not yet dead, there's more to do. There's more freedom to cultivate. As long as you're alive, you're practicing. You're practicing the magnificence of being a human at this time in history. With all of its, pain and all of its fear and all of its awareness. So many nights on the road, and not dead yet, the end of autumn. So as long as you're here, as long as I'm here, we'll continue our path of awakening. So before we have a short sitting, to finish, is there something anyone would like to say or ask? If you unmute yourself. I don't even know who's around. I can go, people, different people. Some with video, some with not. Everyone mute. When we sit now for 3 minutes, what I'd like us to do is really to focus on the freedom that you can find in each single breath. That you're choosing to take a breath and you're choosing to be aware of that breath. You're choosing to be aware of your body and you're choosing to let go of your body. You're choosing to let go of your breath. And you're choosing to take another breath. And you're being aware of your mind. And you're being aware of thoughts passing. And you're choosing not to hold on to those thoughts. So I think that the way we practice this freedom and non-attachment is freedom. Okay, non-attachment is freedom. Is by letting go to every moment that we notice. And we let go by simply focusing on the next moment and not staying with the one that passed. You see, this secret of letting go is that it's not pushing away. It's simply choosing to pay attention to something that's happening now and not to something that just passed. So stay with the breath that is, and then you'll be letting go of the mind and the thoughts and the breath that were, or the ones that haven't come yet. So the way we practice non-attachment is paying close attention to the body and mind that's happening in this very breath. Okay, so let's take a minute now, and we will sit calmly and close your eyes. Breathing in and breathing out. Breathing in, I know where I am. Breathing out, I know where I am. Breathing in, I notice my body. Breathing out, I notice my body. Breathing in, I notice my mind. And breathing out, I notice my mind. Breathing in, I am grateful and appreciate this moment. Breathing out, I'm grateful for my awareness. Each time you breathe, you notice this moment, and there's the freedom of being able to focus your concentration on this breath, not wander on to other things that do not exist. Your mind is free to choose. Practice that freedom every breath. It's not something you're given, it's something you do. And now we finish creating a certain dedication. May our practice be strong and soft. May it be open and caring. May our minds be free. And may I live my life in such a way that is a benefit to all sentient beings, relieving suffering and increasing joy. May all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings be free of suffering.